When we transitioned from being students into becoming practicing lawyers in Hong Kong, our lifestyles changed dramatically overnight. While it really helped us both to have more routine and structure in our lives, the long hours and stressful nature of the job meant that we really needed to prioritize our mental health management.
In our line of work, with urgent requests coming in from clients at all hours, a lot of late nights, and the generally high-stakes nature of what we do, it took a lot of deliberate work and trial and error to figure out how to take care of ourselves and manage our mental health. But over the years, we've worked out a few things together which have really helped us look after our mental health while working as lawyers. Hi guys, welcome to our channel. It's Em
and Lloyd, and today we want to share with you the main things that we do in our lives that have significantly improved our mental health management as two corporate lawyers in Hong Kong. Now before we get started with today's video, there are a few caveats and general disclaimers that we need to make. Firstly, the points that we're raising today are just general things that we do to manage our day-to-day lives as professionals with demanding and stressful jobs. None of the things which we talk about today are a substitute for professional mental health advice. If you think that you're struggling from a medical condition, you should absolutely seek the help of a medical professional.
On top of this, our tips are applicable for when things are really busy but still actually manageable. If there's a situation at work that really does not feel manageable, or if you're in a difficult spot, please do try to make sure to speak to HR or your supervisor, or as Lloyd mentioned, seek professional help if needed. Keep in mind that there's also other tips which we won't cover in this video, but which we've covered in our previous videos. In particular, prioritizing sleep, exercise, and nutrition.
While these things are easily just as important for mental health management as what we want to discuss today, in this video we wanted to go through the day-to-day things that we do specifically for managing mental health in the workplace. The first and most frequent thing that we do to manage our mental health at work is to remember that even though we're faced with stressful situations that may be outside of our control, we are capable of gaining control over our attitude, emotional response, and feelings toward that stressful situation.
At work and in life generally, a lot of different things can happen which can cause a negative emotional response from us. In the context of work, the most common thing that happens to us which negatively impacts our mood is when we have to cancel plans, work late, or work over the weekends due to last-minute requests, whether it's from clients or colleagues.
This unfortunately is also not a rare occurrence for us. When deals are live or things are moving very quickly, it's very common to be hit with last-minute requests for things that need to be done. While this is incredibly upsetting at times, particularly where plans need to be changed last minute, we implement something called the 5-minute rule, which helps us get our emotions back on track as soon as possible.
The 5-minute rule is something that we learned from the author and speaker Hal Elrod. If you're not familiar with him, we've got some links in the description below to his book and to some of his talks. Basically, with the 5-minute rule, you get a full 5 minutes to be as upset as you want about any given situation. However, once those 5 minutes are up, you have to remind yourself of the 3 magic words. Can't change it.
What these words remind us of in any given situation is that logically, feeling miserable about a circumstance that you can't control won't actually do anything to help the situation. In fact, it usually only makes it worse. Applying our work example, we know that the work needs to be done anyway, and if it's particularly urgent, it may be unavoidable to have to cancel plans or move things around.
As a result, the 5-minute rule has actually been a really useful tool for us to remember that there's no value or benefit in making a certain situation worse for ourselves. Instead, we use our logical minds to remember that if we just gripe and ruminate over how terrible it is to have to work late or work over the weekend, it's only making an already unpleasant experience worse for ourselves.
And on top of reminding ourselves of this fact, if you have colleagues, friends, or a partner who can keep you accountable, it really helps to hear this from an external source as well. When Emily or I are going through particularly dire stretches at work, we do our best to try to remind the other person that feeling miserable about something we need to do anyway doesn't really help the situation, which is something that's quite difficult to engage our logical minds to do when you're in the heat of the moment and things are really stressful.
However, we do find that really taking those 5 minutes to let out and experience our negative emotions, if done deliberately, helps us shift our mindset afterwards so that we're thinking more logically. It's often difficult, if not impossible, to try to take over our emotions with logic, but it's much easier once we've let ourselves initially experience our natural emotions without holding back.
We're all human after all, and nothing good ever comes from suppressing our emotions. Another thing we do that helps us manage our mental health is to try to keep broad perspectives on life. Now what we mean by this is putting effort towards not succumbing too much to tunnel vision and thinking that our professional lives as lawyers are too normalized in our own minds.
Based on our experience and observations, the lifestyle of lawyers, as well as those of other professional advisors we frequently work with, such as consultants, accountants, and bankers, tends to become normalized. This is both in terms of the negative and positive aspects of our lifestyle, but either way we don't think it's particularly healthy. Normalizing the negative aspects of our lifestyle, such as frequently working late, canceling plans, or doing things like taking work calls in the middle of our birthday dinners, which has happened to us before, means that we don't often put enough emphasis on resting and recovering mentally after we finish the work. This is because we perceive everyone around us as doing the same things, and we therefore tend to downplay the impact it has on us mentally.
On the flip side, when we start to normalize the positive aspects of our job, which we do like, we tend to undervalue those things in the long run and tend to forget how lucky we are to have them, especially when things get really busy and stressful at work and all we can focus on is the negative stuff. For instance, we're fortunate to be in a profession that allows some flexibility in terms of where we work, which allows us to work from home when needed, as well as being in a profession that pays us quite well for what we do. And we found over time that it's just as important to not normalize the positive aspects of our job as it is to normalize the negative aspects of our job.
What we do to try to actively maintain a broader perspective is to meet and spend time with people who work in different industries, whether it's health and fitness, food and beverage, or the creative industry. After going to law school and working as lawyers, it's of course quite natural to have a lot of friends who are lawyers and to spend a lot of time around lawyers. However, thanks to our hobbies and the pursuit of different kinds of experiences, we're fortunate enough to have met and befriended a lot of great people over the years who work very different jobs from ours.
Every job has its own challenges and benefits, and hearing about what other people, including our friends, love about their jobs and also what they struggle with helps to put our own jobs into perspective. This really helps us appreciate the positive aspects of what we do, while also reminding us to take the negative aspects of our jobs quite seriously and to make sure that we make enough time for rest and recovery when needed. It's also worth mentioning that we genuinely really do enjoy spending time with people who live very different lives from our own. It can be really refreshing and thought-provoking to hear about different perspectives and experiences from our own, and it can really help us switch off from thinking about our own work situation as well. Now, the last thing that we do to manage our mental health that we want to share with you today is to set boundaries and create downtime for ourselves where necessary.
Now, in the context of work, it can be tricky to set boundaries because, as we mentioned, sometimes you can't control your work situation. However, boundaries are important not only at work, but also in our personal lives, specifically when we experience the feeling of constantly needing to be available for everything and everyone. When we perceive a lack of control in both our work and our personal lives, it can lead to feeling like our time is never really our own and that we're always bound to the clock, even in our downtime. The issue with this is that it's more of a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach, meaning that we're just reacting to the situations that we're faced with instead of actively managing how we want to spend our time.
Emily and I have put a lot of thought and practice into setting up our own boundaries for our personal time, especially when we're in need of a recharge. We have found as well that we have different social batteries, meaning that we have different requirements for socializing and for downtime. While generally speaking, keeping a healthy social calendar is a really good thing for the both of us, we find that Emily has a little bit less social energy and requires a bit more personal time to unwind, whereas I'm a bit more of a social creature. Now, this is not to say that I don't have an upper limit on the amount of socializing that I want to do. I definitely do. But it is important for us as a couple to recognize that my threshold is a little bit higher than hers, and so when we're planning things together, we try to keep that in mind.
Now, I have to give Lloyd credit where credit is due. As someone who has had difficulties saying no to things and always feeling like I need to do everything, I used to tend to overextend myself and really stress myself out as a result. However, after Lloyd recognized that we have different social batteries, whenever we made plans together with other people, he would raise with me whether or not it was a good idea for me to join if he thought I was already a bit busy on the personal front. Over time, I learned to become better at recognizing myself when situations might exceed my threshold for socializing, and then learning to say no or rescheduling. Now, when I plan my social and personal activities, I try to spread them out accordingly and then give myself breaks as well.
In fact, we both try to plan our social and personal activities in this way, where we try to schedule things in advance as much as possible to get an idea of how busy we'll be socially in any given week. While there's no guarantee that plans won't change or that things might get rescheduled, this allows us to have a high-level overview of the obligations that we have in any given week and therefore lets us plan our personal time accordingly as well. While it's super important for us to plan out our social obligations, we find that it's equally important to plan out our personal time, where we can do things to recharge our social battery that require little to no socializing, like watching TV or playing video games.
So there you have it, guys. Those are the main things we do to manage our mental health on an ongoing basis.
We definitely recommend trying to build some of these into your routines as well, as they've had a huge impact on us in terms of how we manage our mental health and manage our stress at work.
Thanks a lot for watching, guys. If you like this video, please hit that like button below and consider subscribing.
And if you have any thoughts on other videos you'd like to see, or if you'd like to discuss any of the things we talked about in this video, please let us know in the comments.